I have a saying that a lot of people know of, which is nothing will ruin a great employee faster than watching you tolerate a bad one. The more you tolerate bad behavior, the more other people will see that. And even your great employees, even the ones who are awesome, there's no way they can't psychologically go, oh, shoot. Okay, well, if he's willing to tolerate that, then yeah, I'm going to work hard, but I don't have to work that hard, right? Because he's okay with that.
Hello and welcome to the Digital Orthodontist Live. I'm your host, Dr. Kyle Fagala, and today I am joined by leadership, business, and relationship expert, Dino Watt. Dino, how are we doing, buddy?
I'm awesome, man. Thanks for having me.
Excited to have you here. What's brought you to Memphis, I wonder?
Maybe going to visit a little Saddle Creek Orthodontics.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to be doing that later today, but first, let's podcast. So Dino, if you're not familiar with him, you should be, but he speaks to standing room only audiences in the orthodontic world. Literally, someone told me that, and I went, and it was standing room only. It's amazing. He's host of his own podcast, the Propreneur Podcast. He also has two meetings, the Team Transformation Experience and also Ortho Evolution, which he co-hosts with Tracy Martin, Jill Allen, and Michelle Shimon. So needless to say, he's a very busy guy, and we are very privileged to have him here in Memphis today. So we're going to cover Dino's greatest hits, as it were, so prepare to drink from the fire hose. We're going to discuss how to create and maintain excellent team culture. We're going to talk about marketing ideas with a potential economic downturn on the horizon. We're going to look at how to use our time the best way possible, how to get the most out of our relationships, how to sell through a screen, and yes, there's more. We're going to cover the topic of languishing and how it could be the hidden syndrome that's dragging your team down. Man, I feel like everyone out there is like, I can't wait.
It's a lot
to learn all of that. So in this 3-hour edition of the Digital Orthodontist Live. But first, I want to thank our episode sponsor, Neon Canvas. Neon Canvas, in my opinion, is the premier marketing agency for orthodontists. Our completely U.S.-based team features over 50 experts in each area of digital marketing, including search engine optimization, web and graphic design, branding, photo and video services, and much, much more. Neon Canvas clients, this is new, now also receive a collection of 13 proven orthodontic systems from my practice when signing up. There's some really great stuff in there. And so if you're ready to grow your practice like never before, please check us out at neoncanvas.com. All right, so Dino.
Yes.
Great to see you. Thanks for
awesome to be
enduring the intro.
No, it's great.
It's amazing how you kind of pop right into the podcast mode, right?
It is, yeah. You have to
0 to 60.
That's right.
Yeah. So I'm going to start with some personal questions.
Oh, okay.
If that's okay. We're going to start little Barbara Walters, and then we'll
kind of an open book. My wife doesn't like that too much, but I am.
I'm an open book as well. So, but you don't get to ask any questions today. That'll have to be on Propreneur.
Nice.
So we want to get to know you better. What were you like as a kid? Maybe interests, hobbies, and so on.
Yeah, so I'm a middle child, so I was always searching for attention, right? Because I had two older brothers and a younger sister. She got all the attention for all the new stuff. And actually, it's interesting because I just saw something on a TV show called The Offer, where a young girl the lady was talking about why she did something she did. And she said, my whole life, I've only had hand-me-downs. I never got to choose anything myself. My style was what my brothers or sisters didn't want. And even when I got married, my husband bought a house that I moved into. And I totally connected with that because that's how I was as a kid. I just was the kid who got everything handed down. I never got a choice in anything. And so when I had a teacher in third grade who put me in a play and had me lip sync to the song Dirty Laundry by Don Henley.
Don Henley, yeah.
And everyone was laughing and clapping. And I went, oh, this is my thing. My brothers and sisters are not good at performing. They're not good at getting attention. And so I was an attention seeker, big time.
Don Henley, a drummer who sings.
Yes.
Much like myself.
There you go.
That's amazing. Like outside of the performing, I love that because that helps me sort of understand you for sure.
Yeah.
What else were you in as a kid? Like, what were your hobbies? What made you tick?
Really what was interesting is I did all the things that you did back in the 70s. Like I was in baseball and soccer, and I hated it all. I was definitely a right fielder, right?
Okay.
I was there. I remember getting in trouble because I pulled the grass around me in a circle. And I was proud of it. I was like, oh, look, I made a circle. And they were like, you're not supposed to be doing that. But because I was sitting down the whole time in right field doing nothing. I I was somebody who really enjoyed being around people.
Okay.
Back then too, we, definitely the latchkey kid. My parents divorced, so it was like me coming home, doing my own thing, taking care of myself, and I was obsessed with television shows, like sitcoms. I have kind of a Rain Man-ish type thing with sitcom theme songs. I even wrote a speech one time that was only sitcom theme songs, like the words of the theme songs. Yeah, you can find it on YouTube.
Did you know that when I lecture, now I share my favorite theme songs from TV shows?
Really?
Yes. Yeah.
What's your favorite theme song?
My top 5. Well, you'd have to see my lecture. No,
Okay.
my number 1, and you're going to say, oh, okay, is The Office.
Yeah, okay.
I really like that theme
Great.
song. We also did a Halloween costume to it.
Yeah.
I think I've got, what do I have? The Jeffersons is on there.
Yeah.
Brady Bunch is on there.
Yeah.
Fresh Prince of Bel-Air is on there.
Great.
Cheers is on there. Cheers
Yep.
is going to be on there. And then my bonus is The Golden Girls. Thank you for being a friend. It's
You know
a
what
good
my
one.
bonus is that nobody will ever get? Joni Loves Chachi.
Oh, okay.
That is a great theme song.
Sure.
It's one of my
Happy
favorites.
Days is also great.
Happy Days is a great one. Yeah.
We do this all day long. I didn't know. Like, I'm sitting here watching you like, wait. Now, I thought I was
It's
a kid that was
insane.
addicted to TV.
No,
Okay,
no,
so
it's
now
great.
I see why we're so similar. All right. As much as I would love to stay on this for 20 minutes, let's press on. We'll talk more after the
mean,
show.
a bonus.
Yeah, there will be a bonus episode where we just talk about sitcoms. What's your professional career been like? Obviously, like, no now, but like,
Yeah.
what got you to here? And then I think it's always nice to maybe share some successes and some failures over
Yeah.
the years. So,
Well, I actually never ever thought I'd be in this industry at all.
Hmm.
I did not set out to this at all. I actually set out to be a performer and an actor in LA. I quickly, because I needed to feed my family, I actually have my degree in makeup artistry. So I actually was a
way.
professional Hollywood makeup artist for a while.
wow.
Blood, guts, all that stuff, plus beauty, all that fun stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And when I quickly realized I was about 7 years in that this is not conducive to having a family and being at home. I liked being at home with my kids and stuff. And so I got into real estate, oddly enough, back in California. And that made me see somebody on a stage who was talking about taxes, and he was hysterical and just really made everybody engaged. And I went, oh, I could still perform, but maybe not on TV and all that stuff. And that's when I started seeking out learning how to speak on stage and how to train people. And the two topics I cared about most in the world were marriage. I really saw what my parents did as a lesson of what not to do.
Yeah.
And decided to do something different in my marriage. And I thought I could help people do that. And then the other part was I was always that kid in school who everybody came to for advice about like how to get along better in their relationship or how to get along with their parents. And I just thought that would be kind of cool to do if I could do that, and started focusing on that. Somebody asked me about marriage at an event that I did, and I made up a program that I did not have, but they were asking me about it. I'm like, yeah, I do this thing called the Business of Marriage, and I help people put marriage principles into business principles into their marriage. And I got a ton of people coming over going like, wow, I want to know about that. So I decided to make a business out of it. About 6 months later, I'm doing it full time. And I had a friend in Utah who was a financial advisor who dealt with chiropractors, dentists, orthodontists, and attorneys. And he said, Dino, the number one reason why people fight in our meetings is money. And they're married, and I don't want to deal with their marriage. So will you help them with their marriage? And I'll deal with the money. I said, sure. One day I got a call from an orthodontist, the orthodontist had me come out to his house. I actually super nannied him for a little bit. And he said, well, this is working great in my marriage, but in my office, I'm married to 12 work wives. Can you help me out there? And I went, sure. And went into the office. And because of what I had done with business before, I was able to see some things that his consultants weren't actually telling him or couldn't see because they were focused on the orthodontic side of
the
business.
systems and the
Yeah. And I was like, no, let's talk about your relationships and how you're communicating. And it worked really, really well. And he said, Dino, no one's talking like this in our industry. Will you come speak on the stage? It was at the Pitts Progressive Group.
Yeah.
And I said, sure. And went in there and got a client out of that, and that snowballed. And that's the really quick version of probably about a 7-year journey.
So today, are you pretty much all orthodontics, or are you still active in other?
Yeah. No, I've been pretty much, I actually just got another dental client who is the husband of an orthodontist that I work with.
Okay.
But yeah, pretty much all orthodontists. I've done financial services, done some dentists, like I said, a chiropractor, a naturopath. But I mean, the systems are pretty much the same. People are people, right? Yeah. But when it comes to failures,
unless they're periodontists, but yes.
I'm sure that's a good joke.
It's
a great joke.
It was a good joke. It was a pretty good. I think someone enjoyed it, but go ahead.
Yeah, there's a lot of inside things that sometimes I'm like, sure.
It was worth interrupting you for. Okay. We'll edit it out if no one laughs. We're going to test
Everyone's
it.
Busting up.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Okay.
You mentioned failures though, because I do want to make sure that
it's
understood that so when I was in Hollywood, one of the things I did is I produced a TV show, and I produced a show that was it was sold to a small company that was going to put 5-minute clips on the internet for people to download and watch during their lunchtime.
Sounds amazing.
Pre-YouTube.
Yeah. I
sold it for $13 million. I was very excited because I did the whole production, the whole thing, the whole show, the pilot program for $10,000 that I begged, borrowed, and stealed from friends and family. And if anybody who's old enough here to remember the dot bomb that happened. So I signed the contract on a Thursday. By the following Friday, the company was bankrupt.
Oh.
With my contract in hand. So I made no money, and
Fabulous.
I was in very much depression. And that's where I first learned, like, not to put all your eggs in one basket and how bad it could go. That was the biggest failure, I would say, when it came to business. But it also forced me. A friend of mine ran an entertainment company and said, hey, why don't you come and manage this company for me, because I need to build it. And it made me go to a different direction, and I built that company up to a very successful business in about 5 years. And
that's great.
And that turned everything else.
I didn't know this. These are great stories, man. Thank you for getting those out.
They go a lot deeper, but I know we only have
13 million. It's the number 13. I think was probably. I'm not a numerologist, but
I didn't think about that.
So you should have asked for 14, or maybe just taken 12, and you would have been okay. What was the show? Sorry,
it was called Soap Dish Daily, and it was basically Entertainment Tonight meets soap operas. Back when they had more soap operas on TV, and I mean we moved it around. I met with Jenny Jones. If people remember Jenny Jones' show, I met with her at her offices. There's a show on right now called Paradise Island with a different Mark Wahlberg, who's the host. I'm sure people will know who that is.
Wouldn't it suck to be the other Mark Wahlberg?
He is the other Mark Wahlberg. And he was with Dick Clark Productions. He shopped it around, and we finally found this little company. And it was one of those things where, I mean, we were living in a 700 square foot apartment. I had 3 kids under 3. We had zero money, and I'm telling you, we really did. We asked friends and family to take a chance on me, and I bootstrapped the heck out of the thing. I was working part-time as a DJ, and this was going to be it. This was the moment. I remember I was working at Nordstrom's for my main job in the makeup counter, and I remember when we produced the show and we got it all done, I took it to Nordstrom's for a morning meeting, and they let me show the pilot to everybody. It was about an 18-minute pilot.
Yeah.
And everybody was all celebrating with me. They're like, that was amazing. That was awesome. And I had friends who I had, I hired them to be the host of it. And it was just like Entertainment Tonight. I had behind the scenes stuff. It was crazy. And so when I sold it, I had that moment of like, I went to work. I was like, you guys, I'm done. You know, and they say, what would you do if you won the lottery? And people were like, I'd quit. Yeah, I did. I went and I was like, guys, I'm putting my 2 weeks notice. I'm done. I just made this. And everybody's celebrating with me. And a week later, like that, all the pet.coms, all that stuff, that was that week. And I went into a really bad depression. Like I really was really bad. And it was not a good time. And it took me probably about 15 years to have enough courage to go back to the friends and family when I actually started making money again. And I paid every single one of them back.
Wow.
That $1,000 that they gave me. I'm like, you're not getting interest on it, but $1,000 back.
I'm sure,
they were all
Uncle
happy.
Joe asked for the interest, but you're like, no, you're not getting it.
That's right.
Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Maybe, dare I say, the best story that I've heard on this podcast. That was great. It was really, really good stuff. So let's jump into some orthodontic stuff.
Yeah, sure.
Because somebody out there, they enjoyed the periodontist joke, but now they're like, can we get into the dentistry stuff? So we're going to talk, like I said, multiple different things. We're going to start with team culture. Yeah. That's probably, of all the stuff we're talking about, the most universally needed topic to discuss. So that's why we're starting with it,
Sure.
We want to bury the lead here. So first question is, at this point, I'm guessing you've been in dozens of orthodontic practices. Correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure.
Are there any like common cultural issues that you see? Like, what are the most common things in terms of bad team culture maybe that you see?
Yeah, I think probably the most common one that is overlooked, and I think a lot of people think they have it, but when you dive down, they don't, is number one, a very specific vision of what we're doing here and that we're all on the same mission. And I think it's easy to say, well, we're here to, provide for our patients and give them a great smile and stuff. But
yeah,
that doesn't really separate you from anybody else. It doesn't. There's no differentiator between you and the guy down the street. Then, if that's true, and there's no reason why somebody wouldn't leave you as a team member to go to somewhere else if that's true.
Right.
And then the second thing that leads to that is the value system that you have. I actually just spoke about you today during that call that I was mentioning earlier because you guys do something a little different. I believe that what keeps offices together and grows cultures are similar value systems. Not necessarily core values, because I think core values can sometimes sound like a judgment, but value system. And why I mentioned you is when I first came to your office and during your morning huddle, you said a prayer. Now, in our societal climate today and what's going on, that's unusual. And I thought that was awesome because in some way, every single person in your office likes that as a value and adapted it. I don't care how religious they are, how spiritual they are, but in some way they went, okay, this is a place where they care enough to pray over me and over our patients today. And I've had that at a couple offices in Texas. I was in office once before, but you contrast that to not every office needs to have that, but what are the other values you have? If you go to the Huffington Post, for example, they have nap rooms at the Huffington Post because Ariana Huffington really values people being able to go and take a nap when they need to take a nap. So I think the way that you really grow culture from what I've seen and I used to work for Disney, and so we can get into that a little bit if we need to, but I think that when you have a group of people who have a set value system and can understand that you might think politically, socially, different than I do, but when it comes to the work environment, our values are matched. We can grow despite those differences that are happening out there. So I think those two things, vision and values, trump all strategy you can come up with when it comes to culture.
Okay, I like that. So obviously, if you're struggling with vision and values, you got to sort of strategically go after that.
Yeah.
So if you're working with a team and they've got issues, like how do you sort of strategically approach that? Because obviously you kind of do this thing like it's almost like one of those reality shows where they go in and they're undercover and they watch the restaurant and it's just a disaster or whatever, and then they come back and like, here's what we got to do. Right. Like, how do you approach? And we're kind of going through the process, but how do you approach fixing those things, getting people on board, and all that? I mean, I don't know.
Well, I do a lot of yelling. Yeah. Like I'm screaming at people.
Always
I'm
works.
Gordon Ramsay of the ortho space, for sure.
Lots of throwing of omelets, or whatever.
Right,
so, yeah,
right.
for
Lots
sure.
of swearing.
Yeah.
No, so it always obviously starts with the top down. And so the first thing we do is we figure out, okay, what really is the vision? What do you want? What's the ripple effect you want to make in the world? Or as Steve Jobs says, the dent in the universe, right? And so we figure that out, and then we just have to talk about it a lot. I'll use Disney. Everybody knows Walt Disney's dream was to create the happiest place on earth. He's been dead for over 60 plus years, and yet everybody knows we go to the happiest place on earth. And so what is that very simple, relatable, retellable vision? And doesn't always necessarily have to be about the thing you do. It just has to be how it helps the thing you do grow and makes people part of a cause. There's so much data around mission-focused, cause-based things that help people want to be a part of. And so that's the first place. And then, as you'll see tomorrow, we're going to go through and we create, okay, what are the vision? What are the values that everybody is aligned with? What do people want? And that's probably the most important question that I ask, which is, what do you want? Because if I know what you want, then we can reverse engineer what it takes to get what you want. But if I don't know what you want, we're just shooting in the dark.
Yeah.
So vision, values, and then based on what do you want. And so we start there first always.
Can you give me some examples of maybe some visions? Like,
Yeah.
Because if someone was like, I mean, maybe to all this, like, hey, I don't really know.
Yeah.
like what's
Most
a good
people don't.
vision? I don't know.
Yeah, most people don't. I'll tell you one that was one of my favorites. Is doctor out of Northern California, Dr. Dave Datweiler. We sat together and we were going through a questionnaire that I have, and I go through that. I find out some keywords and where they're thinking and what they want. And I found out through the conversation that he was an architect before he was an orthodontist. And he had done architecture, I want to say for 2-3 years, and just really hated it. Decided to go back to school. His dad happened to have been an orthodontist as well before. So he went to school, became an orthodontist. And the first question I said was, well, then you're the smile architect, right? And he was like, I never even thought about that. And I was like, what? That's like right there branding wise. That's right in front of you. Well, as we're going through his desires and what he wants for his people, the ultimate vision he came up with was designing a reason for you to smile the rest of your life. Now that's bigger than a slogan, right? Because what they do then is they approach, and I actually was blessed enough to be able to, I was doing some work in the area and I got to go see him 2 days ago, and still in this 10 years now, in his office, in his lunchroom are the core values posted. And the very first one is, every patient is a rock star. And when he comes up with this idea of designing a reason, first of all, designing, it's about him. He loves design work. He has pictures of bridges in his office. He has all these things going on that show that he loves design. And then a reason for you to smile the rest of your life tells me it's beyond what you're going to do here. But that every time they're going to look in the mirror, oh yeah, okay, there's a reason to smile today. I have straight teeth. I got treated a good way. I was made to feel a certain way. And it just extends beyond, we create great smiles.
Yeah, I like that. Great example. One final question on team culture.
Yeah.
What are the things, and of course you only go visit like really awesome teams that have everything great up.
Yes.
What are some consistent issues you see that make great team culture, I won't say impossible, but difficult?
The number one, and this is going to be hard for so many people, the number one thing is that when you allow, put up with, tolerate bad behavior, it is the beginning of the end of your culture in your office. Now, every office has a culture. Let me just say that. It doesn't matter if you designed it or not. Culture is typically designed, it is helmed by the person with the strongest personality in the office. Now, personality doesn't mean a good personality.
Yeah.
But it could be that person who you're allowing to trample all over your values because you don't want to cause waves. I have a saying that a lot of people know of, which is, nothing will ruin a great employee faster than watching you tolerate a bad one. The more you tolerate bad behavior, the more other people will see that. And even your great employees, even the ones who are awesome, there's no way they can't psychologically go, oh, shoot. Okay, well, if he's willing to tolerate that, then yeah, I'm going to work hard, but I don't have to work that hard, right? Because he's okay with that. And the second thing is, what's really hard, and this is what's going to be hard for people, is the hardest team member to have, bar none, is the person who is great at what they do and not a fit for your culture. Because you make excuses for them. And you will be like, but I don't want to, like, their talent is so good, but they're the fastest in the clinic, and you'll come up with all these things. And no matter what, it is the demise of your culture. And it sets the pace.
That was a great answer.
Thank you.
So it's time for the next thing.
Okay.
Again, remember, we're drinking from the fire hose here. Yeah. Fireman Dino here. I don't know. So I sort of had this weird image. We'll cut this out, I'm sure, of like the classic like male stripper who's dressed as a fireman.
I'm glad you're thinking of me as a male stripper. That's good
just
to know.
The first part of the male stripper part. Like you show up to the party and everyone's like, woo.
I don't know, Kyle, what is a classic stripper fireman?
I don't know. I've just seen it in shows. There was a Tom Green episode back in the day. Let's jump into the next topic, which is time management. How are we managing our time on this podcast? I don't know. So in terms of time management, this is a very general and broad question, but
Yeah.
how are people wasting their time these days? Because we've been wasting time as people for thousands of years.
Sure.
But, what about today? What's unique?
I want to know, did my wife ask you to ask this question? 'Cause,
No. You're a little ADD, aren't you?
I'm
told me
very
that.
ADHD,
Yeah, right.
very much. And I didn't know that at all until I didn't know I was dyslexic until my son. But it makes sense. Most entrepreneurs have ADHD.
Yeah.
And most creatives have ADHD because you just get sparked by so many different things. So I think obviously creativity or time wasting is happening around social media is a big thing. But I also think a lot of people, and I'm guilty of this, is we waste time with things that don't matter, but we're intrigued by. Mm-hmm. Like I can go down some rabbit holes. We were actually just talking to some of your team members here about the new chat,
ChatGPT. Yeah,
man, I've no joke been up till 2-3 in the morning, just rabbit holing that sucker like crazy. It's the best, and it's the best trying to figure out how to use it.
What's your favorite TV theme?
Oh,
ChatGPT.
Oh, that's a great
We
question.
got to ask.
That's good. That's a really good question. What's the best? It's going to come up with Cheers. It's going to
probably Cheers, and that's okay.
Yeah, and that's a good one.
Go with that. MASH maybe. But yeah.
Yeah. So we waste time on things that don't necessarily matter, which I don't think is necessarily a bad thing, but figuring out when to do that is probably the most important thing. Mm-hmm. I actually create in my schedule very specific blocks of like free time where it'll say, okay, it's 2 hours of free time. And that means if I wanted to stare at the wall for 2 hours, that's my free time. That's what I get to do. The challenge is I'm a contributor. I like to contribute to people. And this is where I don't guard my time as well as I should. This is where I joke about my wife, because my wife, great example, just the other day, somebody just reached out, hadn't talked to them in probably 5-6 years, said, hey, Dino, I have a guy that I know who is looking to buy a home from this other person, but he's not sure how to do it creatively. And I just immediately thought of you. Would you mind talking to him? And I said, sure, why not? Well, I didn't know he was going to call me within 3 minutes. So the guy calls me 3 minutes, and I spend a good 45 minutes on the phone with this guy. But I really enjoyed it, right? I got to give him some creative solutions, stuff that he wasn't thinking of. And every time I hear him going, oh, wow, I never thought about, I could totally do that. It feeds me. Well, of course, Shannon comes in about 40 minutes into that phone call, and she's like, who are you talking to? Yeah. I was like, I tell her afterwards, she's like, you just spent 45 minutes of your time with this guy. I know.
Shannon sounds like me.
It's that contribution that I love to do. Yeah, so I have time blocking. And what I was going to say about the time blocking thing is when it's free time, I've had to get in the habit, because when I first started doing it, people would like, hey, Dino, do you have any free time on Tuesday? Look at my schedule. Yeah, I do have free time. And they'll say, oh, cool. Can we meet at this time? No. It's my free time. It's not that you fill up my time. It's my free time to do whatever. And that's helped me quite a bit when I can actually just block out stuff. And with my schedule, I really have to.
Yeah. So with time management, I guess one of your tips and tricks would be to maybe block your schedule.
Time block,
So I think the first thing you talked about, to me at least, reminds me of the Eisenhower matrix. I don't know if you're familiar with that.
No, I'm not.
No? Okay. President Eisenhower, I think it's in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. I think it's in that book.
Okay.
And it talks about the 4 quadrants. So behavior is driven by urgency, not importance.
Yeah.
And so that the quadrant that we should spend the greatest amount of time in that creates legacy and change is things that are not urgent but that are important. And where do we spend most of our time? Increasingly, thanks to social media and devices, well, the quadrant that's not important, and it's not even urgent.
Yeah,
totally. Not urgent that we binge a full season of a show that's not even that good, but we do it anyway.
That's right.
So that's what that reminded me.
I didn't know that was called that. That's great. I know that.
Eisenhower box, Eisenhower matrix. Awesome. Yeah, it's good stuff. That's my favorite, like, how I conceptualize how I should spend my time and what I should be involved in. So blocking your time, giving, based on your unique personality type, blocking time to serve maybe the weaknesses that you have as an ADD person, No,
that's a really good point.
But to protect that time to be productive or to not be productive, which I think is good for the mind. Because, there are some nights where all I want to do is I want to come home from doing a bunch of important stuff and do nothing.
I think it's necessary.
I want to veg.
No, I think it's necessary, Kyle. I think too many, especially high performers and high achievers, which everyone listening to this is, because you've gotten to where you are because you're a high performer. is the value of recreation or recreation. And to be able to say, no, my brain, there's a great book by Jim Quick called Limitless. And he's a memorization and speed reading expert. And he talks about this idea of you have to be able to give your brain that break. And it can't just be sleep. Sleep is super important, right? Yeah. But to be able to, you'll be more creative and more productive if you set your time to just enjoy yourself. Look, when you're drumming, I'm going to guess, but it's kind of like when I'm dancing. It's active meditation. You're not focused on all the other minutia and stuff. You're just there in the moment. Yep. And that helps you down the road. When I was doing real estate, I used to tell people, my very first principle was get more creative. Go to a pottery class, a painting class, a dancing class, something, because the more creative you are, the more money you will make. If you think about in our society, the people who are the most creative make the most money. Jim Carrey makes more money, or used to when he was hot, makes more money than Meryl Streep on a movie. Why? Because it's, to us, comedy, silliness. It's him and being creative. She's amazing. She's dramatic. She's there. She's also being creative, but we see it differently. The most creative people make the most money.
Interesting. I like it. Let's shift on.
Yeah.
You're if I Google you, it says Dino Watt, relationship expert.
Oh, that's okay.
It does.
Wow, that's great.
So we're going to talk relationships.
Does chat say that too? I should chat.
Chat that. We're not sure about that.
Who's this guy?
Yeah. No, that's not true. Actually, that would be a great exercise right now. If I had my computer.
Aliases.
What do you know about Dino Watt? That'd be amazing. Let's talk a little bit about relationships. Obviously, we all deal with strained relationships and so on. Yeah. And you've got a rich history of working with couples, and part of why we worked with you is that my wife and I have worked together for 10 years. Yeah. It's not easy.
No.
We're doing our best. But
very unique situation.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about how you work with relationships. What do you do to help people, and just that whole thing?
Yeah, you're right. Working with each other can be challenging. My wife and I are challenged working with each other. She is a totally different personality than I am. We used to actually do events together, seminars together, where we would trade on stage together, and that worked really well because we would do our own different strengths, right? But and I'll just be open in our relationship. She is somebody who has great ideas, but she doesn't have to execute on most of them. So she'll come in and be like, "So I think you should do this, this, and that, and the other." All right, bye. And I'll be like, "All right, I'll pick this up and do what I can with it," right? So that becomes a challenge. You really have to learn each other's work style, personalities, not statementing all over each other and asking more questions. But in our industry, one of the things and the reason why I came in when I did and how I did was because there's definitely this interesting, and I'm sure it's not unique to us, but there's definitely this interesting dynamic where, and I'm sure, I think you and Anna did this too, is when you start the business, it's the two of you. And you're everything. You're the TC, you're the financial coordinator, you're the collections, you're everything. And so
the janitor.
Yeah. And as the business grows, one of you out of the two continues to be primary importance, and the other person continues to get replaced over and over and over again. So you can't be replaced for what you do. Now you can take away having to be the janitor. You can take away some of those things, but ultimately you're still the thing for why we got into business. The other person, and I say this as the other person because I have clients who it's the opposite. Right. She's the orthodontist and he is the person. Yeah. Where the other partner is now, in some instances, less and less needed. And that's could be a good thing because that's why we got in business, right? To replace ourselves so we don't have to be the person doing everything. But when it comes to your personality and how you feel, I'm less needed now. I'm not as important in this business anymore. I don't have as big as a role, or even if my role expands, like in your guys' case, where she's now the office manager, but now she's tugged to what? Being a mom and not wanting to be there as much and wanting to do more. And so what does that dynamic look like? So we have this huge new different dynamic that nobody really talked about or thought about or planned about, that now we end up waking up one day going like, oh, this isn't what we really want. How do we change it? And everything in your body, there's a book called Change Your Brain, Change Your Life. Dr. Daniel Amen, and he's a neuroscientist, and I got to meet him one time, and I talked to him about this idea around why people get so angry in a relationship when they divorce. And he said it's because your brain, the back of your brain is so, it has created a habit and an addiction to each other that when that's now separated, it's kind of calling for it, like a magnet's trying to magnetize that person back, and it's not getting it, so it's frustrated. Well, I think that happens in our offices too, because now our positions are different. We still talk about it all the time. We go home with our business, and yet we really haven't created a solution of how to separate that nice enough to where we both can be happy. And we haven't been intentional about it. It also requires a lot of vulnerability. And this is one thing that I think is so challenging with so many offices with couples. We have to be willing, if we want to have a strong relationship, is to be incredibly vulnerable with one another. To really be able to have a place where we can say whatever we want to each other in a place of love, but truthfulness, so that the other person hears it, doesn't take offense by it, but also is aware of it, and you can do something about it. I'll be, if I can, I'll just be completely personal about this. So my wife and I have a rule in our marriage called radical transparency. We don't have honesty. I don't believe in honesty. That was assumed when I got married that I was going to be honest with her, right? Yeah. But radical transparency has meant for the last 28 years that when we're really, like when we're not in love with each other, it's okay to say that. To be like, you know what? I'm just not in love with you this week. Because the moment I say it, all of a sudden the power of the thoughts in my head of what if go away. It's kind of like that movie, The Green Mile with John Coffey, right? It just disappears the moment I get it out of my mouth. Well, this last year, a little bit more than a year, my wife and I, we've been building a house and it's gone well. That whole part was fine. But we've been struggling with a personal issue that has been something that has been between us for my whole life. It's been a spiritual issue, how we feel spiritually, how we feel connected. And we've both been struggling about it. We would not have survived it if we didn't have this rule because we have had the best conversations. We are not on the same page. We're more on the same page now than we were probably for the past, I'm going to say a good 18 months. But for 18 months, it didn't affect our marriage in a negative way because we could be super vulnerable. She could say, honey, I don't really feel like this anymore, or I don't think that's right, or I don't want to talk to our kids like this anymore, or make our kids believe this anymore. And it's like, but you're changing what we thought we were going to believe for the rest of our life. That's a big step. But because we were able to be totally radically transparent with one another, it's been the best thing to our marriage ever. We are stronger now than we ever have been before. And it's hard. There's been a lot of tears. There's been a lot of frustration, but never has there been anger. Never has there been the other person's wrong. It's just been, okay, I'm going to be open to you being in that space and being here for you, because that's what it's about. When I took a vow to marry my wife, I said, through good times and bad. Yeah. Through sickness and health. That doesn't mean when I'm feeling good, it feels, I mean, I'm feeling bad too.
Sure.
When I'm feeling sick, and when you're feeling sick, I'm there for both of us. So it's been really interesting, and I think that's probably the number one challenge that most people have, is not being willing to be open and honest, totally radically, transparently vulnerable with one another. Yeah, that's a long answer.
No, it's great. So not being willing, well, not being able to feel safe.
Totally. You know, and that's where it comes down to.
Vulnerable.
Yep.
And vulnerability is not a bad thing, but
Yeah.
So.
But it is if you don't feel safe.
No doubt.
If you don't feel safe, you're not going to be vulnerable.
And it has to be a broker deal. Like both parties have to come to the table. So,
all
right, so there's that radical transparency or candor. I hear it kind of, described as that.
Sure.
I want to try to come up with two other like pearls for people who are in struggling relationships. We may not be able to. I'll grant you one. You could probably come up with 15.
Yeah.
I think one is just lack of intentionality.
Totally.
And, in our businesses, we meet, and I think this is also true of families, we meet, 10 times minimally, like in a very focused, like day way to talk about building the business and hitting production measures. Every day, most of us have a huddle.
Yep.
Most of us have channels where we're discussing goals, and we've said all these things. Very intentional,
Yep.
because it's a business. You have
Yep.
a spreadsheet, right?
Yep.
But so many of us, if you're a Christian, let's say, how often do you have a devotional as a family, or how often do you read the Bible or pray together,
Sure.
or how often do you go eat dinner together, or when you eat dinner, are the phone's gone? Those sorts of things. Like in a business setting,
Yep.
there will be posts like, "Yeah, my team member, I caught him on her cell phone, and what should I do?" It's like, well, what about if your kid's at the dinner table with the phone? So, and I don't mean
What
to be.
if you're at the dinner table with the phone?
Yeah, well, sure.
That's
Never has happened. Never. And so I think there's some of that meeting together.
Great point.
Which breeds intentionality, or maybe intentionality breeds the meeting, but you get the point. So I would offer that. Give me a third one.
Let me add to that, though.
Yeah, come
I
on.
have a thing called the Marriage Mastermind that we implemented. And it's 4 specific things that you talk about because of the biggest challenges that most people come up with or deal with in their marriage. And it's everything from money to schedule. A schedule is such a big one, especially when you have little kids, right? Money and security. So what we talk about, though, is that for the couple who are the CEO or the co-CEOs of the family, is that it has to be, as you said, intentional. There's no phones at the time. You can't be hungry. You can't be super grumpy. You can't be super late. But it's got to be, this is a meeting we have. And so this is something Shannon and I have implemented for years. And I actually, and you guys will be getting this soon, is that we actually have a breakdown of what it looks like. And how do you go through this marriage mastermind? And it always ends with the reward, right? It's always like, okay, we're going to go on a walk together. We're going to go eat together. We're going to have some alone time together, whatever that looks like. But it's intentional in that sense. So I think that's great. The third thing I would say is kind of like it, but not focus on this stuff, is getting away together as a couple. No kids. Listen, I know I come from a place of privilege right now, where I'm an empty nester, and it is the greatest thing ever, and I highly recommend it.
Looking forward to it.
But we made it such an important thing in our marriage since our kids were little. We went away together. If it was a weekend at a motel down the street, if it was when we had no money whatsoever, it didn't matter. We had to take that time for ourselves, and I wanted to show my kids this. Actually, I have a fourth one I want to share with you because of this.
Great.
I really wanted my kids to see that Mom and I took time to cultivate our relationship. And we would tell them specifically, hey, we're going away. You're going to stay. And they got used to it real fast. It was fine. The fourth thing that is akin to it is one of the most important rules I put in our relationship with our kids especially was the hierarchy of understanding that Mom was the most important person in this family to me. And I am the most important person in this family to Mom. And unless you're talking about cases of abuse and all that, and of course we'll put that out there. But in a normal situation, I wanted my girls to know that I want them to find a partner in their life who treats them like that. And my son to be the man that would grow up to treat his partner like that. And what it did is, and I mean, I would sit my kids up. My kids will tell you now. I would sit them as little kids and say, I love you to death. I will die for you. Dad's always here for you. And Mom's number one. There was never a time in the teenage years where there was the pit Mom against Dad. There was never a time where they didn't think we weren't a united front. Now, there were times I didn't agree with my wife. And there were times she didn't agree with me. But we would still have each other's back in front of the kids, and then afterwards we would discuss something. But that was such a powerful thing to know that my kids knew there was a hierarchy in our family, and it also was important for me to know that about Shannon and her to know that about me, that we put each other first. And it's been awesome. I think it's one of the reasons, there's a stat, it was, I think through Canada, I'm going to mess it up, but it was above 60%. I want to say it was up to like 68%. The highest growing divorce age range in Canada and the United States was 60, 65.
Wow.
Think about that. Empty
You
nesters.
made it that far.
Yeah. And you know why? It's because a lot of people put all the focus on the kids.
Right. And
they just hold on tight, or they white knuckle it until the kids get out of the house, and they look at each other and go, who are you?
Yeah.
I don't even like you. And then they leave.
Yeah.
I never wanted that. I wanted to make sure, no, I was thrilled when my kids. We all cried for a moment, and then the kids left, and it was all good. And now I love being with my wife.
Well, we idolize family and children and over prioritize their activities.
Yep.
Culturally, and family is a good thing.
Sure.
But this is actually one of my favorite parts from 7 Habits is like what is at your core should not be your family or even your wife.
Yep.
It should be your value system.
That's right.
But yes,
yep.
we could do this all day. Great stuff. Relationships. Now your relationships, they're all fixed. We fixed all your relationships. Let's move on to sales.
Yeah. I love sales.
Because if your relationship's going to fail, the divorce is going to be expensive. So you're going to have to sell more. Okay.
That's not where I was going. I was going with relationships and sales, same thing.
Okay, fair enough. Okay. Well, take it how you want, tomato, tomato. All right. So you have written a book called Selling Through the Screen, Mastering the Art of Connecting, Communicating, and Closing the Sale Virtually.
Yeah.
I would like an Oxford comma after communicating, but that's fine. That's just me.
Oh,
that's
nice.
Just me.
That sounds great.
Yeah. All right.
I'll make
that
sure
sounds
we
great.
change that on
whatever
the
that
next
is.
publishing.
On the revised version.
I just learned what that was.
That Oxford comma?
About 2 weeks ago.
That there are not enough commas in the world for me. My mom was an English teacher. Give me all the commas.
Love it.
The M dash, if you don't know what an EM dash is, Google it later. One of my favorite punctuations.
All right.
Okay. Yeah, I could rank my 5 punctuations, but we'll do that later. All right. So the interrobang is number 2 for sure. All right. So.
Oh my gosh.
Question mark and exclamation point. You don't know an interrobang? Someone out there does. All right. Not a fan of periodontists or interrobangs. Okay.
I love it.
Yeah. All right.
So learn.
What are some ways that those in an orthodontic practice can sell through a screen?
Yeah.
This is a softball for you.
Yeah, that book came through the pandemic, obviously, and I actually ended up finishing writing it as we were kind of getting out of the pandemic, of just the idea of like, don't you understand this was a great opportunity for us to evolve our practices? And the fact is, in normal world, not in the orthodontic world, in normal world, selling through the screen is not going away. It's a huge opportunity. It actually democratizes being able to connect with so many people. And there are huge businesses being created. Look at somebody like a Tony Robbins, for example, right? Yep. He was able to fill stadiums with people, 35, 40,000 people, and that was amazing. Now, he can do that and have 75,000 people from around the world at the same time.
It's wild.
That's a huge impact. So how do we take that to our business and realize that there's 2 things that every single person on the planet wants more? Time and convenience. Everyone wants more time. Everyone wants more convenience. No one's going to get more time. You have this certain amount of time. Nobody knows what that time is. You never know when it's up. But throughout your day and your week, you have 24 hours and 7 days a week. If as a business owner, I can position myself to let my possible customers, or in our case, patients, know that you care more about their time and their convenience. So that's why you have virtual consultations. That's why you have the ability to give them treatment, 50% of the treatment at least, virtually. You're going to set yourself up in a way that nobody else in your area is doing. You become the unique, different person. You look at people who are doing this right now. Actually, this conversation started before COVID with, for people who know Dr. Waldman out of California. And they were not even doing it virtually. They were doing it over the phone. He had a TC who was living in Florida, like his office in California, and she would do the consult over the phone. First of all, he made everybody pay for it if they wanted to come into the office. He charged if you came in the office, and it did not go to the fee.
Right.
It was to come in. So they only accepted the consult to be over the phone. Stacy, I interviewed her when she was doing this, and she's amazing. She's moved on since then. But then you have people like Dr. Farina in Florida, Dr. Bills up in New Jersey. These guys are seeing how, because they're offering it and they have a system down, all of a sudden they're able to sell through the screen, understand how to talk to people, how to connect with people, how to look at their teeth. They're killing it. It's a huge part of their business now. So I think it's a great opportunity for so many people right now. I mean, we're going to be digital. We might as well be digital, right?
Yeah,
That's called, if people talk about digital offices right now like crazy, and they only focus on things like scans or 3D printing.
Right.
Well, let's make it all digital.
Yeah. Yeah, at some point they've got to come into the practice.
Yeah. Totally.
Eventually.
Yeah. Well, that's
but I
one
do
of the
think
unique
that
things about us.
there's a certain like element of pre-selling that's
Yeah.
essential marketing wise, you know, but this is like a whole nother level of pre-selling.
Think of all the people that come in that are just shoppers. Right there alone. If you could just get rid of the shopping aspect of it and let them shop through the screen, spend 20 minutes talking to them, and then go to the net and let them, and then invite them in. Yeah, you're a great client, candidate, have them come in, and then do that piece. You're now going to see a higher close rate because those people are now more serious.
Yeah.
So, and there's obviously a methodology to it. You got to be dedicated to it.
Yep.
These guys don't do it because they do it. They're not successful because they do it every once in a while. I mean, Waldman's a really interesting case because he only does that. I mean, that takes some guts,
That's
right?
amazing.
That takes some guts to be like, I'm only doing this. And I'm not suggesting that for everybody. I'm just using these guys as extreme examples of, if you want to try to set yourself apart, here's one very easy. Yes, it takes a little bit of a learning curve at the beginning to get people right. That's why I wrote the book, to how to do it. But then after they do it, you've got a whole different way to separate yourself. Yeah, the guy down the street, he's $500 cheaper than you. But you got to go in for all those appointments.
You offer time and convenience.
That's right.
Yeah. Very cool. I think, for us, it works best in a hybrid sense.
Yeah.
So obviously there's in-office
it.
stuff. I think vast majority, 99.999% are doing it hybrid.
Yeah.
And probably more of an emphasis on in-person still.
Right.
Who knows when that might end someday, and who knows when we can do everything completely remote. I have no idea.
Yeah.
There will probably be a time where we put on little virtual headsets and we kind of...
Oh, I'm so excited for that.
I can examine the mouth and, I don't know. We'll see. It's at least theoretically possible. We're not there yet. So I want your best, low-hanging fruit pro tips for in-person sales.
Okay.
I know you go and you sit in exam rooms and you listen to people.
Yeah.
We had one that I was trying to be, quick, and then I was talking 25 minutes about football. Right.
It was so good, I'm telling you.
Okay.
I love what you did.
Well, tell us your best tips for selling more in the exam room.
Well, you know what? I'm going to go off of that. The number one tip that people do not do is tell their story.
Okay.
People don't tell their story about their own braces story. I was in an office 2 days ago, and, listen, I love all my fellow consultants in the industry. I don't actually consider myself a consultant. I look more at the strategy side of things. But for the most part, there's some few changes. But when it comes to the presentation part of it, everyone kind of teaches the same thing.
Yeah.
It's not a huge shift. So what I notice is people getting so stuck into the presentation of what they're doing that they're not creating a personality about what they're doing. Mm-hmm. The first way to connect with somebody always, since we're cavemen, was tell your story. Mm-hmm. So what if, when you first sat down, you asked the person, have you ever had, this is what always happens. So have you ever had treatment before, had braces before? Or you ask mom, and they'll say, I had it when I was a kid. It's like, oh, okay, cool. And they go on to the next thing. That's a leading question.
Yeah.
Whatever they say, you get to create a conversation off of. But if you were to be able to say, hey, so when I got braces, I was 12 years old. My parents were in the middle of a divorce. And so every time that payment came every month, the braces, the fee was my fault. They got in an argument. It was because they had to pay that fee. Mm. But I'll tell you, I loved my braces. I wasn't a great patient. I had braces for 4 years. I ate everything you weren't supposed to eat. And you want to know why I did that is because I wanted the attention. And braces gave me attention. See, when I was a kid, not everybody had braces. Not all the kids in my school had braces, so it gave me attention. And I got to go in and see a bunch of people who paid attention to me every time I went in. And even when they were twisting the wires really hard and it was tightening everything up, and I knew I wasn't going to eat anything but Jell-O and pudding for 2 days, I loved it because they gave me attention. So I kept them on for 4 years. Now, I don't want you to keep them on for 4 years, but I want you to know, what happened there? Everyone listening just heard the story. They saw themselves in the story. Mm-hmm. They got... Man, why is that not number one sales tool? The number two sales tool that nobody does, but most people, I think, do a poor job at is just assuming the sale. Mm. Listen, they walk in this office. There's no mother out there that, number one, when their dentist told them that little Johnny needed braces, didn't get on Facebook and first thing she says, hey, little Johnny needs braces. How much did you pay and who did you go to? They already know. They already know on a general basis how much braces are going to cost. So if they've taken the time to take little Johnny out of school, come into your office, and it's probably not the first time they did it, they went to another office before, I'm going to assume that they want it. I am going to just say everything I can to say, you're getting these, come hell or high water, we're making this happen. We're going to be your best choice ever. Oh, you've been to 2 other consults before? All right, what do we need to do to make sure we're your last? Like, what an obvious question you should ask, but nobody does.
Yeah.
So low-hanging fruit to me, sales and story and assuming always.
Cool. I like it. Yeah. I talk about in a lecture about storytelling and how good stories, they breed trust.
That's a great point.
And trust is predicated most on knowing who someone is and feeling like you have a relationship with them. And so basically that is that.
That's right.
Understanding someone's story allows you to know who they are when it's a story that people can connect to and they feel like there's a sort of relationship there.
Yeah.
From a pre-marketing or a pre-sales standpoint, social media is very powerful because it's a great way to tell that story and to connect with people so they have an awareness of who you are. Hopefully they perceive you as the expert in that field.
Yep.
And then if they feel like they have a relationship, which is that weird thing about the virtual world is that someone can know a lot about you and you know nothing about them, and there's this sort of one-sided relationship, as it were.
Yeah.
But when those people walk in, you don't have to do a lot of anything.
Nope.
If anything, you can mess it up by doing too much. So I'm right there with you.
There's that saying in sales, which people buy from people they know, like, and trust. I don't remember who it was, but there was it was a mentor of mine or somebody years ago who said, actually, it's not that people buy from people they know, like, and trust. It's that people buy from people that they know, like, and trust them. So when you can show somebody that you trust them enough to tell them your story, when you show them that you trust them enough to, that's what it was in the book Influence by Robert Cialdini.
Yeah.
He tells the story, I think it's an influence or a persuasion, one of those. He tells the story of the salesperson, the insurance salesperson, who is in the home, and about 10 minutes into the home goes, oh, you know what? I forgot something in my car. And he goes out to the car. Before he goes out the car, he says, is it okay if I just let myself back in? And if they say, oh, yeah, sure, just let yourself back in, he knows he has them trusting him. And he leaves all of his stuff out, open, and goes out to the car to show them, I trust you, that you're probably going to look at my stuff and that's okay.
That's brilliant.
Yeah.
That's good stuff. All right. Great sales stuff.
Yeah.
This had to come.
This has been fun.
Well, of course it's been fun. We both like to talk, right?
Yeah,
it was a TV theme, so
That's right.
So we're gonna finish with a word. This feels like a sort of a mild SAT word. There's probably some people that don't know what this word means.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And that word is languishing.
Yeah.
Not a word that I use all the time.
No.
Sort of a poetic word, maybe. What is languishing?
So languishing, according to psychology, is the stepchild of mental health.
Oh.
It's the forgotten stepchild of mental health. And what it is it's come up quite a bit. There's a great article written by Adam Grant. And what it is in psychology, they basically look at your mental health based upon depression or thriving. And languishing is right in the middle. And it's something that a lot of people really didn't put a lot of attention to. And languishing is when you just don't feel excited about anything. You get home and you're kind of really done with the day. You get distracted way easier than you normally do. You don't feel like working really. I think it's one of the reasons why we've seen in the last 2 years so many people either not showing up to work more often or accepting a job and then not even coming into the job. The number one actually indicator of it, which is very interesting, is from a Chinese proverb, a Chinese saying, and it is bedtime revenge procrastination. And what it means is that you feel so frustrated internally that you've given your life up for the day that when you get home, you don't really do anything and you end up staying up way too late, scrolling on your phone, even watching one more Netflix show. Oh, I can just watch one more episode. And what it's done is the studies have been coming out a lot about it since COVID. And the biggest challenge with it is that if you are stuck in languishing and you don't do anything about it, you don't do the remedy, which I'll tell you what that is in a second, is that within 10 years, you will experience severe depression. So it's important. It's important for us to understand that our team members are probably going through it. A lot of them anyways. There hasn't been a time in a lecture or in a team that I've gone to and I've asked them these questions beforehand that at least 50% aren't like, yep, that's me. Number one is being able to label it and know that's languishing. It's normal. It's what people are going through. The pandemic brought a lot of that out from a lot of people because we didn't feel like we had control over anything in our lives. And so what do we have control over? Scrolling. What do we have control over? Not doing what we're supposed to be doing. And so we rebelled against it. And I see this in doctors and team members. It doesn't matter who, patients, of course. And I saw it in myself. When I first started reading, my wife actually brought me the article and I started researching it. And I just was like, yep, that's me. And it becomes something that will hold you back. Now, I used to talk about it years ago in my marriage courses, especially with men. I saw this. Men who would stay up way too late going to bed. And I have a rule in my marriage course, which is husband and wife need to go to bed together. Now, it doesn't mean they have to sleep at the same time, but they need to close down their day together. As you mentioned earlier, you're going to pray together. You're going to do something to where you're like, day's over. Well, I'd have a lot of men who were just like getting up and doing nothing. They'd go scroll on the computer, and there's always, when it's late and they're alone, usually some bad stuff happens. They're by themselves.
Nothing good happens after midnight.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
And so I was talking to this one gentleman one time. He was a real estate agent. His wife was a doctor. And I was like, hey, Matt, I just have a thought. This might be one of the reasons why you're doing this. And I didn't know it was called languishing at the time. And I said, hey, Matt, do you ever feel that when you are staying up late at night, you're staying up because you know you didn't get the things done today that you wanted to get done? And the only thing waiting for you tomorrow is disappointment because you didn't get the things done that you want to get done today, and you're just going to repeat that again. And this guy, probably 6'3", he was an ex-football player, big man. He just crumbled, and he started bawling. And he was just like, I feel like this every night, and I never get it done. I'm never doing it right. Our marriage isn't doing well. I'm not being a great father. I'm not hitting all the goals I want at work. I'm not. And he just started going through this. And if I would have known back then that it was called languishing, it would have been a lot easier. But I just recognized it and went, wow, how many men feel like that? And it doesn't matter how successful you are, you feel like you are. I mean, look, I believe that our society in general right now is not very pro-man. And I understand parts of that. But I also feel like, gosh, we don't want to lose all these great men either. And we've seen an increase in suicide. I mean, that's the reason one of the reasons I got into this industry and my mission. We've seen an increase in divorce. We've seen an increase in depression. And so when I saw this languishing, I just felt it was really important to start talking about it more, putting it out there, because the remedy of it is pretty simple. Number one is to recognize that that's what it's called. Number two is to find flow. Now, flow is that state that you get into when you're drumming, right? It's when I'm dancing. It's when I'm on stage. Flow is that state where time disappears. It's that state where you can just be focused and doing whatever it is that you don't have to think about all the other stuff in the world. And when I talk about time blocking, you should time block time to flow. And flow is the remedy to it. And the more you can get into it, the better. Now, some people get into flow at work. Some people can be like just in the mouth and just enjoying, and I get that. But what is it that you can find that actually helps you get into flow, or helps your team members get into flow, or encourage them to get into flow, to where they can feel that they've been able to capture back all the stuff that's been taken away from them through musts, like they have to do this because they got to pay a bill. They have to do this because it's their duty. And the one thing that they can own and get into. And so flow is the fastest way to get out of it. And I think more and more people need to put the focus on that, and it'll completely change the way languishing is happening in their life.
Wow, it's a lot.
Yeah.
I have some thoughts It's certainly not a rebuttal.
Let's do it.
It's opening all these gates of things I want to chase after.
Yeah.
There's so many rabbit holes now. I guess it reminds me of like what's like the cultural issue right now. I think is like always the question. And the reality is we're always on our cell phones. You look at photos from the 1920s and all these people are on a train reading their newspaper. I mean,
right.
we have always sought ways to distract ourselves or to feel less socially awkward or whatever.
Yeah.
I think increasingly, some things that have changed. Okay, man, this would be a huge cultural commentary, but hookup culture, not committing to something is kind of more and more the norm.
100%.
Attention span is getting shorter and shorter and shorter, and we're being trained in that way by our devices.
Yeah.
The way that shows are edited. I'm a huge fan of 1970s, the golden era of filmmaking. Shots are very long. Mm-hmm. Now when you look at and you've done a TV show, so like the pace of changing and blocking,
editing and all that stuff.
Editing, it's so fast.
Sure.
Because we don't have much of an attention span. And I think it is the idolization and the putting up on a pedestal of immediacy and quickness and the short-term gain and all that kind of stuff. And what ultimately happens with all those things, and especially a purely digital world, is it does not ultimately breed happiness.
Yeah.
It breeds sort of a dopamine hit in that initial, and it makes us feel like this is good. I remember the first time Netflix was a thing, and I can watch the next episode. I don't have to wait.
Right.
It was an amazing thing.
Yeah.
But now you sit there for 10 hours and you've watched this entire show, and you're sort of like, did I even enjoy that? You know? And so HBO, I still feel like understands the idea of releasing an episode at a time. Mm-hmm. It creates a water cooler moment where we're all kind of, of the same mind. And so now we're so separated out and kind of parsed out, having our own little experience that's a one-to-one with something that actually doesn't bring us happiness. And so I would say to the languishing thing, it's almost like a failure to thrive.
Yeah.
And thriving only comes with intentionality and good relationships and occasionally touching grass, as it were.
Totally agree.
And so I think that is sort of like the bow on the top of our conversations on team culture and our conversations on relationships and maybe our conversation on languishing.
Yeah.
And I hate to know that there's orthodontists and there's team members that are in that moment of languishing, and the way that they seek to fix it is either with short-term dopamine hits, alcohol, drugs, Netflix, it's not as bad as alcohol and drugs, but it's not going to breed ultimate happiness, or just quitting altogether and just saying, screw it,
Kyle, I just want to put a button on that because one of the...
I put a bow, you'll put a button. It's great.
I questioned you even when I was coming out for the first time to visit your office, and I do this to every office I come to visit, because people, I take on between 9 and 12 clients a year.
Okay.
And I do that intentionally, but I go and see a lot of offices per year. And before I got to the office, I'll ask them. I said, "Is this just like a shot in the arm for them to for you to be able to say, hey, look, I gave him a short term, Dino was fun, we enjoyed ourselves thing, or are you looking for some long term?" Right? And for the most part, most people are just looking for it. No, I just want to give him a good time. To your point, we are just looking for the quick fix, the quick dopamine hit, and moving on. And I don't think that's going to, and I'm not saying this for me, I'm just saying this in general, like you, to your point, is that, man, how often do we do that? And yet, go back to the flow thing. Flow doesn't allow you to be distracted. When you're in the drums, I don't care if that phone's ringing or whatever, you are on it. That's it. There's your focus. And the more we do that, when you leave, how long were you practicing last night? 2 hours?
2.5,
2.5 hour session. You leave fulfilled. You leave exhausted.
Yeah, I was gonna say I left with lower back pain.
But it's something you're willing to go through,
no doubt,
because it's your thing.
Yeah, for sure.
Oh.
Well, and so my advice to everyone is if you feel like you're in a state of languishing, work with a professional, figure it out, go see a doctor, go see a therapist, and become intentional about it, and write down some goals and seek to improve it in the same way we do with other stuff that's far less important than our mental health. We do not want to be in major depression. It's hard to get yourself out of that.
Yeah.
So start losing weight now, start working on your mental health now, et cetera, et cetera. This was awesome. I knew it was going to be awesome.
This was fun.
Dino was great. So thanks for rearranging your schedule. He pushed whoever you were that got your call pushed so that this could be filmed. I appreciate it. I'm also super excited to have you in the practice today and tomorrow. I'm also excited about lunch. My stomach is just just growling. It's just
Ready
growling.
to eat,
Yeah,
huh?
you could
Good.
probably hear it through the mic. And so if anyone is interested in you working with their team, I was not contractually obligated to say this. I had Dino on the show out of the volition of my own, but how would someone work with you?
Well, definitely come to dinowatt.com.
Okay.
By the time this airs, it might be dinowattconsulting.com. I'm splitting it into 2 websites because of my speaking and stuff.
Got it.
But yeah, just reach out to me, dino@dinowatt.com, and we'll see what we can do.
Okay. What about meetings that are coming up? I know there's Ortho Evolution. There's other stuff. What's coming up?
Yeah, one of my most exciting ones is Team Transformation Experience Part 2 is happening in June because Team Transformation Experience 1 was so well received that we were asked to do it again, and we're doing a continuation of it. We're not doing the same thing again. So we're going to really focus on team bonding and connection, and so you can go to yourteamtransformation.com and find out about that. We got Ortho Evolution in July. I'm at AO. I'm at PCSO. I think I'm at almost everything.
You're at all the O's.
I'm pretty much at all the O's. And there's a lot of O's happening.
All my favorite chips end with O's. So Doritos, Fritos, those taquitos chips.
I don't know taquitos.
You don't?
Taquitos.
The Takis.
Oh, Takis.
I don't know. I mean, it kind of made
I'll go with the Doritos and the Fritos.
Yeah. What are the little onion chips? Funyuns. That doesn't end in O's.
Nope.
But those are fantastic. I'm just kidding. So thank you. So DinoWatt.com and all the other stuff as well. I've got my upcoming stuff, if I can pitch it really quick.
Yeah.
This is where, the people that enjoyed the periodontist joke, the people that were waiting for the dental, this is where they exit the podcast.
Oh, is it?
So the true followers, the good people.
So you got to seed it with but after this,
I'm going to
give away $1,000 worth of something.
I know. I didn't even get better at that. But I'm going to be on a panel at the Orthopreneurs Residence meeting, which is Saturday, February 25th. First time they're ever doing that. That's in Dallas. Hope you'll be there. If you're a resident and you're not signed up, you're like, what the heck is that? Check with Glenn Krieger. I'm also very excited to announce the first ever Orthodontic Awards. I looked around and I thought, you know what? There should be an award ceremony for orthodontics, and so we're doing that. We're going to give away 20 different awards from every aspect of orthodontics, some that you're probably not expecting. There will be over 100 nominees. You'll go and you'll vote, and then the winner will get a golden molar, which you may have seen. The mandibular first molar for what it's worth. We're going to do an award ceremony of some type at the AAO in Chicago, and there's more details inside the Digital Ortho Facebook group. Lastly, I'll also be at the AAO, which is in Chicago, April 21st through 23rd. I'll be playing with Relapse. I'll be lecturing. I'll be doing an award ceremony now, apparently, so that'll be fun. We have a new book that's going to come out, lots of stuff. If you're listening to this on Apple Podcasts, man, that's great. Thank you. I would love it if you give me a 5-star review. And I always say that, and we get a couple, they sprinkle in, but I want a waterfall of reviews. Why not?
You ask your patients for it. Do it for this.
Waiting, yeah. So if you're not a member of our Facebook group, join that. There's 5,600 people in there. It's a great group, the Digital Orthodontists on Facebook. And then finally, thank you. You spent a lot of time with us, I don't know, an hour, maybe more.
That's awesome.
I don't know. It was a good conversation.
Nice.
Time flies. And so thank you for watching. Thank you to Dino Watt, of course, for being here, for being an incredible guest. And thank you to Neon Canvas for sponsoring, for giving us this table to rest our weight on. And last but not least, thank you to my team. Alan, right over here with the headphones on. Scott, who's down the hall. Kurt, down there, who designs stuff. Tom, who's over in Alabama. And then my wife, Anna, who always helps. She puts stuff on cards for me. Thank you, Anna. And from all of us here at the Digital Orthodontists Live, I'm Dr. Kyle Fagala, signing off. We'll see you next time. Thank you. Bye-bye.